Hello, New Garden students. Welcome back to another teaching video. We are in week 2 of Like Me, and we will be on Zoom on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. So I hope to see you there. If you don't know already, the link is at newgarden.church/chat. So we'll see you on Zoom on Wednesday at 7, where we're going to be talking about this lesson. So last week we kicked off a new series called Like Me, and we talked about comparison and how important it is to guard our hearts against comparison and how damaging it can be to just feed into that comparison mindset. And today we're continuing on that and talking about jealousy. So growing up in school, I have a summer birthday. And, you know, people with summer birthdays are either like a little bit older or a little bit younger than everybody else. And I was younger. So always my friends were getting to do stuff before me that came with age. And the biggest thing that they got to do before me was definitely driving. And it was like one by one, my friends were getting their licenses and cars and getting to go places by themselves, and I was still getting driven around by my parents, which I'm grateful for, but didn't seem nearly as fun as getting to drive myself. And I started noticing that I was really getting jealous of my friends who were getting to go places by themselves and go to Sonic after school and all the cool fun stuff that comes with having a license and being able to drive. And it's crazy because they couldn't control the fact they're older than me, and I couldn't control the fact that I'm younger, and it was only a few months difference, but that jealousy was still there, and I couldn't just turn it off, right? And sometimes jealousy can even make us agitated toward people who have something we want that we don't have, or are good at something that we're not good at. And it might even make us dislike those people. I remember another time in high school, I wanted this part in a play and someone else got it. And I was so jealous of this girl because she had the part I wanted, and it made me not like her for a while because she had what I wanted. And that wasn't fair to her, and it came between us, and that's never a good situation. And jealousy always causes issues for us. And if you think about it in your mind, there might be people in your life that you just don't really care for because maybe they're mean to you. Maybe they have been mean to one of your friends. Maybe they have talked bad about you behind your back or something like that. But there also might be people in your life that you don't like because they have a cooler car than you, or they're dating someone that you wish you could date, or they got the lead role in the play, and things like that. Reasons that are probably based in jealousy. Maybe the reasons are a little bit deeper, like maybe you see someone and their family is never fighting, or maybe their parents are always available to come to their games, or things like that that feel a little bit deeper. But what we know for sure, whether it's a small or a big situation, is that jealousy changes the way we see others, and it changes the way we see ourselves. Because jealousy makes us unhappy. It's not a good feeling to want something so bad that we see someone else having and enjoying and we don't have that. Similar to like we talked about last week with comparison, jealousy is a natural reaction that we have as humans, but it does not end up being good for us. So what do we do in those situations when we see someone, whether we're close to them or not, and we're jealous of them? We usually distance ourselves from them, or we might talk bad about that person, and it harms our relationships with those people. And all of a sudden, we have less peace with them and less peace with ourselves. It damages relationships and it hurts us. So we know that we've all experienced jealousy. What are we supposed to do with that? Well, luckily, just like all the other things we talk about, jealousy is not a new idea. And we're going to be looking at a story of a king in the Bible who got really jealous of someone. And we're looking at the story of Saul. He was the first king of Israel, and he was a really good king to start out with. He was a great warrior, and people really looked up to him, and they liked him a lot. And suddenly, Israel was battling this group of people called the Philistines. And you probably remember, who is a Philistine? Goliath. And they had set up camp, and they were about to fight, and they needed someone to face Goliath. So we're starting in 1 Samuel chapter 17. It says, "Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Socoh in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes-dammim between Socoh and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them." So we can see they're like gearing up to have a battle. And then in verse 4, "A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze, weighing 5,000 shekels." Now, I don't know how cubits are measured and shekels, and I'm guessing you don't either, so I looked it up. Goliath, according to this, was nearly 10 feet tall. I think it said 9'9". Very tall. And his armor weighed 5,000 shekels, which is about 125 pounds. So this guy is no joke. Definitely a person that is intimidating and that the other people would be afraid of. And they're looking for someone to go up against Goliath, this huge warrior champion, right? So in verse 32, David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant," talking about himself, "will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You're not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You're only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." So basically, Saul thinks David is crazy for even suggesting that he could go up against Goliath. He's just this young guy. He's a shepherd. He doesn't have nearly as much battle experience as Goliath, and I'm sure he is not nearly as big as Goliath. So Saul's like, this doesn't seem like a good matchup. Well, as the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David quickly ran toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. You probably remember that part of the story, that David did, in fact, kill Goliath. And it wasn't because of his great military mind and his amazing battle skills. He threw a stone that he had gotten out of the creek, and it hit Goliath in the head, and he beat him. So Saul recognized this, and he promoted David because of it, because he saw that David was capable, and he had God on his side, and Saul is honoring the good thing that he saw David doing. So then we're skipping over to 1 Samuel 18 in verse 5. It said, "Whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers as well." And a little bit later it says, "As they danced, they sang, 'Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands.'" So David was so successful in Saul's army that the people started celebrating him and dancing and singing about how great he was. saying Saul has killed this many people, but David, like times 10. Like that is how amazing he was in Saul's army, that they were dancing and celebrating him even more than the king, right? Which, if you're a king and you found this guy and you thought he was great and you promoted him, and now the people are saying that he's way better than you, it's probably not a good situation, right? It doesn't look good for David that he's getting so much more attention than the king. And he started to get jealous. So it says, Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. He didn't like the song. They've credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. And the people continued to praise him. They thought David was the most awesome. And it says, when Saul saw how successful he was afraid of him. And we see throughout the rest of Saul's life, he goes on to plot to kill David. That is how serious this conflict got, that Saul wanted to take him out completely because he was so jealous of David's success. And it caused that many issues. And we see that jealousy has overtaken Saul. And in Proverbs 14:30, it says, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. And I think that is definitely the case with King Saul. He let envy in so much, he let jealousy overtake him so much, that it became his life goal to take David out. This young man that he met and he recognized a talent in, and so he promoted him and gave him this high-ranking position. He got so jealous of him and the attention and the praise that he was getting that he tried to kill him. And jealousy can rot friendships and relationships and achievements and successes and kill our sense of peace. And that's what we see in this verse from Proverbs. And most people believe that the writer of this proverb is Solomon, who went on to be king later and was actually David's son. So can you even imagine, like, throughout Solomon's life, he probably heard these stories from long ago when his dad was younger, and how jealousy can affect someone. And this is what he writes, right? Like, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. Solomon knew from hearing stories from David firsthand that that was the case. Now, we know that jealousy hurts us, right? I feel like that is definitely established now. What in the world do we do to stop that? Like, if you think of someone in your mind right now that you're jealous of, and I just say, like, stop being jealous of them. Did that work? Probably not. And I think there is a key ingredient in this situation that can help us when it comes to being jealous of other people. Now, I want you to think about a time where you have felt either car sick or seasick or something like that. Have you been able to just will yourself to stop feeling sick? You might be able to trick your brain for a little while, but eventually, probably not. You can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna hold on and I'm not gonna feel sick anymore. The same way, like, that's the same way we are when it comes to jealousy. We're probably not just going to will ourselves to not feel jealous anymore. But if you are a person that has gotten seasick before, maybe you've seen those bracelets that have, like, the pressure point on them. And when you press on it, it, like, resets a nerve and it makes you not feel seasick anymore. It's putting something, like, messing up the system at hand to reroute your brain and fix it. And that is what we have to do when it comes to being jealous. And our seasick bracelet in this situation is learning to celebrate other people. And that sounds really hard when it's somebody that you might be jealous of. And there are 2 steps to when it comes to learning to celebrate someone else. First, we have to start with ourselves. And kind of take inventory of what we're grateful for in our own lives. What is going well for me? What are the relationships in my life that I am thankful for? What is bringing me joy right now? What am I good at? And those might feel like cheesy questions to ask yourself, but that's where we have to start. The second thing is to move toward the person you're jealous of in your brain. So think, how can I celebrate this person? What are good things that I see in them? And how can I be thankful for those things in that person? And I promise you, if you start to retrain your brain to think like that, it will change the way that you see that person. Because the more we celebrate others, the more we will like ourselves. The more I celebrate others, the more I like me. And if we can recognize the good in other people and not just lean into the jealousy of that, but celebrate what is good, we can celebrate what's good in ourselves too. So I hope you will join us on Zoom on Wednesday at 7 as we talk more about jealousy and hopefully learn more about how to celebrate other people instead of letting envy take over. So I'll see you on Zoom.